This is More Money with economist Steve Moore. Now, Steve Moore.
Welcome back, folks. This is the More Money Show on WABC Talk Radio, the number one talk radio station on these United States. I want to remind you, by the way, please sign up for the Unleash Prosperity hotline that comes out every morning, and it is free. I'm not selling you anything. There's no Biden inflation here. It's absolutely free, advertisement free, but it's just a really great way in the morning to get a briefing on what's happening with politics, the economy, finance, and a little bit of humor too. We're a little snarky in our newsletter, but we like to laugh and we like to learn. And so get the hotline. It's unleashprosperity.com and sign up for free. And it'll take about 4 or 5 days to get you in the system. If you like it, we'll keep sending it to you every morning. If you don't, just unsubscribe. We don't want to clog up your email folders. So it is my great pleasure to introduce to you one of the co-founders of Unleash Prosperity, and that is Steve Forbes, who is an icon. He is one of my mentors, and I am privileged to call him a friend. There's nobody who understands our financial system and our economy greater than Steve Forbes does. And you all know, by the way, that Steve Forbes is a two-time Republican presidential candidate, should have won both of those times. I think the country would have been better off, but made a good run of it. Steve Forbes, don't you wish that you could just be like Kamala Harris and they just tap you on the shoulder and you're the nominee?
Yeah, that's a dream come true. And, kind of thing you fantasize about, but know that in the real world that can't happen. You know, that's the kind of thing you get on the Soviet.
Unless you're running on the Democratic side. Right.
Yeah. So that's democracy in action from the Democrats. We anoint you. Voters don't matter.
Yeah.
You occupy the high chair, or they think they're going to occupy the high chair.
Yeah, until they don't like her anymore, then they'll throw her over the side and they'll find somebody else. It's funny, Steve, because I was telling the audience earlier that I've been predicting for 9 or 10 months, and everybody just thought I was crazy. I just didn't think that there was any way that Joe Biden could make it through this race, and I didn't think it would happen so soon. But now you've got Kamala, and I do think she will be a tougher candidate than Biden, although I think if I had to handpick who I'd want to run against if it weren't Biden, I think it would be Kamala. But you've been studying her record. I saw you on Fox News the other day doing an excellent expose on her record. I mean, she is no free market friend.
Oh, that's the understatement of the year.
Right.
Nor is Kim Jong-un of North Korea.
That would be a contest, right?
Nor was Joseph Stalin. So.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, she's a full leftist. She was a modern socialist who believes you do things not through democracy but through regulation.
Right.
And she wants to control everything, both about the economy and your own personal lives. She comes from California, where, as you know, every crazy idea seems to germinate there.
Yeah, right. And so, you go down that list and you see things like the Green New Deal. You see, I think you're probably familiar with this, Steve. I think you were talking about this on Fox the other day. She wants a single-payer healthcare system. She wants to just, if we could just get the private sector out of healthcare.
You're right. She wants to ban private healthcare. And, we thought the Berlin Wall fell in 1989,
right.
But mentally it hasn't. And the idea that governments can run things is belied every day. And but nonetheless, she wants to have the government control the economy. She believes in the green scam deal where they mandate EVs. And what's so crazy about this, Steve, is that they know most of these proposals could never clear Congress. That most of these proposals, when presented to voters around the country, could never gain a majority. Right. So that's why once upon a time they tried it through dictation in the courts. Mm-hmm. And now it's through regulation. And what they see as the nice thing about regulation is if Kamala wins, you don't need Congress.
Right.
You just do
That's
it
true.
through regulatory agencies. So just do a run around. Congress is an irrelevancy.
Well, I would just put a little asterisk on what you just said, which is even the courts. There was an interesting Wall Street Journal editorial a couple of days ago saying that she's in favor of a court packing scheme, which I think FDR tried that, didn't he, back in the 1930s? And that
Yes,
didn't
he
go over
did.
so well.
And back then, when they taught civics in the schools about balance of power
right.
in the government, checks and balances, people learned that. So even though Roosevelt did it back in 1937, and even though he had won a landslide victory, the greatest in American history, and controlled by 80% both houses of Congress, when he proposed his court packing scheme,
people said no.
People rose up and it went down to resounding defeat. Today, too many people have no idea the basis of our governmental system, why we want to prevent tyranny by dividing power instead of centralizing it. So these things get traction. I mean, it was just a couple of senators, including Joe Manchin, 3.5 years ago, that prevented a court packing scheme.
I know. Yep. And by the way, the protection of something I feel strongly about as a person who wants protections and wants divided power is she has also come out in favor of getting rid of the filibuster in the Senate. So that means just you get 51 votes, you can do whatever you want. And I don't care if the Republicans are in charge of the Senate or the Democrats are in charge of the Senate. I want 60 votes. I want the super majority because I think it's an extra protection against tyranny.
Well, and that's why the founders had two houses instead of one.
Right.
They wanted one house to reflect popular opinion, but they also wanted one house, the Senate, to be able to to be more temperate, to debate these issues more seriously, and perhaps stop things from the heat of the moment. The founders feared mobs. They feared rampant opinion. They wanted things to be considered. Right. So when people talk about efficiency in government, no, you want these things to be deliberated, not rammed through.
Right. Well, that's why they call it the Senate is supposed to be the most deliberative body in the world. It wouldn't be if you could just get, we got 51 votes. You're so right. And this is something that I think a lot of people don't really understand because they haven't been taught history in the way that you and I were back in the day. But we are not really a democracy. We're a representative form of government. And the whole core of our Constitution, actually, if you go back and read, the Constitution and read the Federalist Papers, it was all about protecting the rights of the minority and minorities. And I don't think the left believes in that anymore.
They don't believe it if it's not convenient.
Right.
That's the thing about them.
When they're in the minority, they
works
believe it.
At the moment. Whether it's ramming it through the courts, whether it's ramming it through agencies. And if agencies actually get clipped, as they would if, say, Donald Trump won, and we passed laws in Congress that really pared these things back, and I know, they'd find another avenue. Give the left credit. They never give up. Even when they get set back, they're out borrowing and trying it again in different ways. And so that's why it's so important. Deregulation, as you know, not the most exciting subject in the world, but by golly, that's modern socialism. You do it through regs like tailpipe emissions are now going to be used to ban the internal combustion engine, which has worked for 130 years, and replace it with something that's very iffy. If people want to buy an EV, an electric vehicle, fine, but don't do it against the will of the people.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. And I don't know if you saw that the recent news that a lot of the car companies are losing a lot of money on EVs. Porsche, which one of the great auto companies in the world, said they were saying a few years ago we're going to go to 80% EVs, and they said that's not what consumers want. One of the things that is so great about the free enterprise system is that the consumer really is sovereign. The consumer can buy whatever they want in a free market system. And I think Joe Biden and the Democrats sort of forgot about that when they said, we're going to force everybody to buy an EV. And the consumers will. And by the way, the auto companies bought into this. They started producing, Steve, for the government, not for the consumer. And what is it? Ford's losing $50,000 for every EV they're making.
Yes, and the only thing that saves them is the government turning a blind eye to them selling SUVs, which the left also ultimately wants to ban. And one of the crazy things they do, and I hope the Republicans hit hard on this, is that every modern convenience they want to undermine.
Yes.
Whether it's air conditioners, dishwashers, washing machines, you name it, lawn mowers, leaf blowers, anything that makes life better, they're against. So they don't actually ban them. They just put in regulations that make them don't work anymore.
Yeah, de facto bans. And, I always have joked, Steve, that if they were right about, climate change and global warming, and look, the planet has warmed a little bit over the last 30 or 40 years. I think that's just a natural occurrence. But, if the planet is warming
from the ice age.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
And if they're worried about emissions, we have the answers. It's called natural gas and nuclear power. But guess what?
True.
The left is against both.
Yeah, they sure are. And, I was just going to make the point that if the planet is warming, I would think we would want more air conditioning, not less air conditioning. But by the way, I had a discussion with our mutual friend, Harold Hamm of Continental Energy, who's sort of the godfather of the whole fracking revolution. And he was making the exact point. I mean, I asked him about the future of energy, and he was saying, he's an oil and gas man, but he was saying like natural gas is what's really going to power the world over the next 100 years.
Well, the amazing thing is, the left pretends they are up in arms about China like everyone else, their bad behavior. Well, China has to import oil. China has to import natural gas. Mm-hmm. If we reduce the barriers on the creation of natural gas, drilling for natural gas and the oil in this country, they would be directly or indirectly dependent on our production. That's the kind of thing we should be striving for. We can be the provider of the world. We have tons of natural gas. And by the way, we need more energy than ever before. Yep. The cloud today uses twice as much electricity as the entire nation of Japan. Ponder that. The third largest, fourth largest economy in the world, high tech wants more, is doing double that. And that's, by the way, one of the things that's beginning to happen, especially if Kamala does not get in, is high tech is beginning to warm up to nuclear power. They realize data centers, we need energy, and windmills aren't going to do it.
But I don't know if you saw this new idea that one of our members actually came up with and has created this video where I don't know what you think about this idea, Steve, but you take all these old rusted windmills, and they're toxic. Actually,
you use them for border control.
You build the wall with them. So, and look, the left should like that idea because they believe in recycling. So we recycle these big turbines and put them, and we could build that 40-mile long barrier at the border. So, Steve, by
the way, one quick factoid is two wind farms, two typical wind farms, have more unrecyclable plastic than all the plastic straws in the world.
Are you serious?
Yes.
I had not heard that one. So that's a good statistic to have, So, but Kamala, by the way, is very into getting rid of plastic straws. That's one of her big initiatives.
Yes, anything that makes life better, she's against.
So we only have a couple minutes left. Yeah, Steve. And I'm talking, by the way, to the great Steve Forbes, who is a former Republican presidential candidate, runs Forbes Media, and is also a co-founder of Unleash Prosperity. So, Steve, in just our last couple of minutes left, and I appreciate you taking some time on this Saturday afternoon to join us. What, look, we got a good GDP report the other day that showed the economy grew at 2.8%. So the economy seems like it's picking up a little bit. The jobs numbers are pretty decent. So, but I don't know. I just feel like we could be doing a lot better.
Oh, yes. The idea that getting excited by 2.8% is that's a European idea.
Right.
And we've normally grown on average through all our history, despite wars and depressions and everything like that. We've grown about an average of 3 1/3, 3.5%.
I know. Yeah.
And 2.8 when you factor out things like government spending.
Yeah.
Isn't that strong? And so we should be growing 4 or 5. 2.8 should be what we used to call a growth recession instead of something to celebrate.
Yeah. So last question for you, Steve Forbes, is you're going to be a top economic advisor to President Trump when he wins. And I know that will be either formal or informal. But when you are, and it's January 21st, 2025, what do you recommend would be the 2 or 3 most important things right out of the gate that Donald Trump should do?
Well, he's going to move on the energy thing, which I think will send a profound message both to us and to the world. The other thing he should do is have a tax bill ready to renew, keep the tax cuts we have and deepen them, throw the gauntlet down. And then another thing is to tell the Federal Reserve prosperity does not cause inflation. So leave interest rates alone. Yes. Interest rates are a form of rent. Leave them alone. Let lender and borrower.
Well, hold on. What do you mean by that? Hold on. I just want to make sure we all understand what you're saying, because, you know, the Fed rate is pretty high right now. A lot of people listening to the show probably would like to see the Fed funds rate cut. So you're saying don't cut it, or what are you telling?
No, leave it alone. Let the markets set it. Revolution. If they want to set a federal funds rate, fine, since it doesn't matter, since banks don't lend money to each other anymore. Right. With the high reserve levels we have today. But in terms of the marketplace, let the marketplace set the interest rates. The marketplace is already saying cut interest rates. You remember the 10-year was almost 5% about a year ago. Now it's 4.2 or so. Yeah. So the markets are saying leave it alone. Let markets set, i.e., people, consumers, investors, producers, set prices. Rent is interest is the rent you pay for money, renting money. Yep. And so it's a form of rent control. And the idea they can use rent control to control an economy of 330 million people here and 8 billion around the world is so preposterous that you'd have thought the idea went down with the fall of the Soviet Union. But you just made a really interesting point on the way out, if you could, in just like our last 90 seconds. Joe Biden has endorsed rent control, which is, I thought, an idea that went away in the 1970s. But can you very quickly, Steve, in the last 60 seconds, explain to my listeners why rent control never works? Rent control never works because the price is not set by borrowers and consumers. Right. So by putting on rent control, guess what happens? Apartments, houses are not maintained the way they should. New ones are not built. And if new ones are built, we see it in New York City, are for high-income people, not the middle class and lower-income people. So that's why you have 10 people in an apartment, is because of the crazy forms of rent control they have in New York and elsewhere. Steve, why don't they ever learn these lessons? It's so obvious. They always want to say we can make things cheaper. They're doing it with drugs. They're doing it with everything. Yeah. And every time they make it cheaper, they make it scarcer and more expensive. Steve Forbes, you are a national treasure. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Folks, we'll be right back. This is the More Money Show on WABC.